Music.
Well, on the just like what I showed you on the YouTube video, yeah, a little bit, yeah, 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 dude. I should have some epic, cinematic
There you go.
vibe to it. Yeah. All right.
Mine would be like the THX with, falling on its butt as your power's booting up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Oh, you don't need to record with that. Mm-mm. No, you're good. Wait, what are you doing?
It was going black. Oh, you need it.
Yes. Don't touch it.
It's your first rodeo.
Oh.
It's not. It was going black, which makes sense because it's plugged into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Are you live again?
Yeah, I'm live the whole time. Okay, cool.
That's what makes a good
I'll see
podcast.
Devin back here in about 25 minutes. The live brings people to the behind the scenes,
Yeah.
which is cool. So, welcome back to the Brews and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Braden Cruz. I'm here streaming live on the Blue Studio here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you want to join us on the live or live on Facebook and Instagram during the podcast, you can go to Brews in Business. That's BREWSN and then business, BUSINESS. Look us up on Facebook and Instagram and any of the other socials to kind of join us in and follow along on the journey. Today's podcast is Resilient Connections with Danny Wright on faith and fostering genuine customer service. We're going to explore how faith fuels his dedication to genuine customer service and the lessons learned along the way. A story of redemption, resilience, and real connections. Now, before we jump into today's episode, let's take a moment to appreciate the brew that keeps us going. This episode is proudly brought to you by G.I. Love Joe Coffee Company, a woman and veteran-owned business right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. G.I. Love Joe offers 4 delectable coffee blends, each meticulously crafted to suit different taste profiles and roast levels. So whether you prefer the light and vibrant Bugle Boy, the all-day companion Old Glory, the pour-over favorite Hail to the Chief, or the strong and robust Bombs Away, there's a blend for every coffee lover. You can support local and enjoy the brew that fuels this podcast. Check out G.I. Love Joe Coffee Company, and remember, every sip is a salute to our soldiers. Check out gilovejoe.com. Danny, welcome to the studio and
Thanks.
the podcast.
Thanks, Braden.
Glad
It's good to
have
be
you
here.
So, where did this all start? How'd you get started
Between me and you, or in business?
in business?
In business. Wow. That's probably the biggest leap of faith that I've ever taken in my life. In business, worked my way here into Tulsa and took a job with a company here, and this was the move for our family that actually moved us to a place where we knew nobody. We moved to Tulsa, didn't have any family, didn't have any friends because of a job opportunity, and it became opportunistic for the entire family, my wife, both of the boys, everything else. The job was great. And then all of a sudden it started to deteriorate because of my company got sold. And basically, I guess at the end of the day, as we were watching things just kind of unfold, my business partners and I, we said, hey, we feel like the customer deserves better than this, and we feel like we can do a good job at this. And so we decided to resign our positions and start our own company.
And not an easy one. It's
No.
not like you decided to mow lawns.
No, it's not an easy one.
And I don't mean to say that for anyone who does mow lawns. I mean,
Yeah.
everything has its own level of hardship or hardness to start. But
Right.
I mean, but you ventured off into engineering.
Yeah. So, as far as myself coming through, I've been in the world of energy, oil and gas and everything for a long time. This was an opportune job for me because, be honest, I'm not a degreed engineer. I actually left college and later became an electrician and everything. And so I was not a degreed engineer, but I was offered a job from an engineering company to come in and do what I knew how to do well from a instrument and controls and PLC standpoint. And then all of a sudden, we decided to venture off and start our own company. And And one of my business partners, he's not an engineer. I worked with him, and he was hired by the engineering company because he had 25 years of experience in fabrication. He was a welder, and he's one of my business partners. One of our other business partners, he's actually an engineer, Barrett. He's our electrical engineer. He went to school, Oklahoma State University, to become an electrical engineer. And the three of us, yeah, we were the worker bees in a company. Two of us were hired by the engineering company because of our experience, in the industry, not because of our book knowledge or anything that we brought from an educational or a college-based study. And so just being invited or being pursued by an engineering company was considered an honor to me, because that was a failure point in life where I wanted to be an electrical engineer, but I just didn't accomplish that task. And then I went through all of I tell both of my sons, I have two boys, and I tell them all the time, I said, go to college, get your degree, do what you want to do so that you don't have to spend 25 years getting to your destination that you could have got to in 3 to 5.
Is that how you feel?
I do feel that way in some sense, but I also would not rewrite this story for nothing.
That's good.
I would not rewrite this for anything, because it wouldn't even exist if I didn't go through the 25 years.
So about what year did TPS start?
TPS actually started in May of 2018. And so that is actually our founding day, that is on the books. We became TPS May 1st, 2000. Did I say 2015?
18.
2018. Yeah.
I remember our birthday.
Yeah.
March 3rd, 26th, 2016.
2016.
But I've been in business since 2014. I changed the name in 2016.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so that's our birth date. So it's kind of surreal to come around. We just turned 5 years old this year. So
congrats.
yeah.
It's a good
Thank you.
milestone. Everyone says there used to be a saying that, like, if you make it to like year 3, you've made it, per se.
Right.
Right. But I think that numbers kind of become more 5 to 7. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
I would say we're starting to feel the effects of you've made it from the business standpoint. Our credibility, our track record, our what I call street credit. It's not that we go around, no pun intended. It's not that we go around advertising ourselves, even though you helped me do that. I would say that the 3-year kind of seems fitting. The thing that happened to us in the middle of starting a business is we started a business and then we got hit with a worldwide pandemic.
Almost 2 years later.
Yeah. So 2 years later, we survived through it. We didn't shut down. We kept plowing forward. We went down to a skeleton crew and just did the best that we could do, and came out on the other side and gained a little bit extra street credit with our customers because of our integrity through those times and everything. And so if we wanted to kind of peel out that 1.5 to almost 2 years of delay where businesses could thrive and just kind of, rather than just idle, I would say we're in year 3, and it feels like we're definitely in a growth pattern.
For some companies, especially for those business owners who aren't necessarily seasoned with, let's say, 10 years of business experience or buying and selling businesses, to where they're ramped up. Everyone's a little unique and they have their own stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you kind of feel it, like after 3 to 5 years, things kind of start getting into line. Your processes, your people. Do you have like when you first get started, you have an idea for what the business is, what it provides, what kind of customers it needs or you're looking for. How do people think of you? What do they say about you? What do you want your brand to look like, and what do people see it as?
Right.
And you kind of figure that out over 3 years, which is why I think it takes 5+ years to really get a business going, especially for one that's long term, unless you're more seasoned and you're one of those entrepreneurs who buy and sell and then start something up, and you're kind of used to, okay, well, I've seen the process and I've done it over 5 to 10 years. Here's how I can shorten that.
Right.
And there's some guys who can do that.
There are.
Which is pretty cool, I think. And usually it takes some capital and connections.
It does. You know, and in the industry that we work in, we're basically OEM manufacturing, engineering, and manufacturing of oil and gas and equipment for the energy sector. So that could, that basically as you're driving down the road and you see any type of fossil fuel, oil, gas production, or municipalities where you see gas lines coming in and you see big pieces of equipment and you would say, hey, well, what does that do? Or what does that vessel and pipes and this and that? I mean, without going into too big a detail, that's the world that we work in.
So do you have the pieces of equipment that you have to move with the, what are they, like 25 or 50 different wheeled trailers, whatever those are called?
We can, yes. Yeah. So
Those things are monsters, whatever they are.
yep. So every once in a while, you might see one of our pieces of equipment going down the road with escorts being over width.
And not the escorts y'all are thinking about.
No, not the escorts. Not those kind of escorts, for sure. But you stumped me on that one. But no, that is when you start thinking about the level of equipment, and then you start thinking about the industry, and then you go, okay, 3 guys decided to resign, start their own company from scratch, and then you start to pile on who are you competing against? 30 and 40-year-old companies, people that have
multi-billion-dollar companies that have,
yeah,
they're seasoned, they have connections, they
That's
have
right.
finance and capital and people and
that's right.
space.
That's right.
Yeah.
You are correct, and a lot of them are right here in Tulsa. I mean, we have some very worthy competitors that have a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise and a lot of resources to do things, and we go into the bid room, against them on some projects every once in a while, and I guess part of your street credit is that you kind of somehow start to become a worthy competitor yourself, right? I respect all of the gentlemen and know a handful of them here that own the companies that we compete against, and it's kind of surreal in a sense because it's not a competitive nature where you're trying to put the other one away. It's more of a collaborative competition. We don't necessarily share trade secrets, but we share the experience of the challenge, and that's a very interesting feeling if you start to break it down because with us as being brand new company, gaining that credit amongst our peers, as far as customers, but more so gaining that credit amongst our peers as our fellow competitors, going, hey, these guys are legit, and it's always kind of nice whenever you start hearing people within the city limits here in Tulsa or our competitors referring to TPS as, hey, no, those guys are good. What they're doing is good. And when your competitor can put you up on a pedestal and say, no, they're a worthy opponent. I've always said, if there's no competition, there's no market.
That's true.
If we don't have a competition out there, then really there's no market, because if we corner a market, then and with no competition in it, is there really a market at all? I mean, can we even achieve the word market? No, not really. So
It's a hustle to get that street credit.
it is.
Man, it's a lot of connections, consistent communication.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, that one's hard. So do you actually make friends with your competitors? And I say this with a little backbone behind it. So there are some businesses or business owners to where they're like, if you're in business, I'm in business to take you out. Like
Yeah.
I take you out of the market, whatever. Then there's those who are like, no, we're friends with our competitors. Like we may go on a project together and they do one part and we do the other, or phase 1 and phase 2. Or I'm friends with our competitors and they give us work, we give them work, and it's a good relationship. I feel like a lot of people are can be very cutthroat in that, and they're like, "No, you're my competitor. Why do I care about you? I don't want to know you. I'm going to take you out of business. I'm going to take your." You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where do you see that? Are you friends with your competitors? Or-
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm going out to drink coffee or anything with the owners of the other companies, although I would. You know, we could find ourselves in a room talking about business in general without getting into the nitty-gritty of what each one of us do. But you hit the exact nail on the head. You know, I could have a company come to me and say, "Hey, we have this project, we have a relationship with you, we want you to do this." And I say, I don't have the resources to do that. Doesn't mean that I don't have the people to do that. I may not have the intellectual knowledge to do that.
Mm.
And rather than set myself in this prideful failure route, I can sit back, take a step back, and ask for help. In other words, and that's kind of really the synopsis of our podcast today is you know, what is the driving force behind the thought process of your business? What is truly in your mental thought when you're driving? Are you trying to take somebody out? Are you trying to gain another dollar? Or are you trying to actually take care of a customer's need? And sometimes the best decision is to push them to your competitor.
So on a couple podcast episodes ago, there were two gentlemen in here, and this is the conversation that we had. And one of them was that side where he's like, "I'm going to take you out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to take over the industry." The other guy was like, "No, I'm friends with our competitors. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like we'll go fish or like have coffee or whatever it is that they do." And the guy that was on the other spectrum, he looked at him. He's like, he's actually changed my opinion of that. And because he's like, when I first got started in business, I was very cutthroat. And then he's taught me that no, you can be, and sometimes you should. Be competitors.
Right.
You know, a lot of times, like, yeah, if there's times like we have a proposal out right now for a job that we can't do internally, but I can either sub it out or give it to one of our partners and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, there's an opportunity here. Do you want to be part of it?" I'll bring him on the call, let the client know that they're one of our partners, they're within our network, and we're going to work together on this project. We're going to fulfill part of this, and then him and his crew are going to do the rest.
Right.
And I think that's like a beautiful collaboration to be able to do that. And I remember many years ago, I tried to make friends with people in my industry. They're just like, nope.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, in particular, and how you feel this way, but in my space, like there are so many people. Like I've got a lot of people in my industry,
Yeah.
a lot of quote unquote competitors. Even though that there's very few that I feel like that can do what everything that we do, that we can provide, and also with our network that we have. Um, but everyone just seemed very cutthroat.
Yeah.
And it was very frustrating because I wasn't looking to take business from them. I wasn't looking for free education or knowledge.
Right.
All I wanted was the connection with them. That's all I wanted. I just want to know who you are, know who I am. If I can help you, great. If you can help me, great. And if that ever happens, great. If it doesn't, great. But I at least know you and you know me. We've established that, and there's not this, I don't know, weird blanket facade thing or whatever to where you're like,
Yep.
nope, you get near me, I'm gonna sock in the face. Like,
No.
come on, man. Like some people get really weird, you know.
You're not wrong. And you know, the basis that I take that back to, and this is really kind of the foundation thought process of TPS, is especially the world that we work in. We work in a very highly technologically advanced, you know, oil and gas processing. There's a lot of chemistry. There's a lot of physics. There's a lot of things that you know, originated in the scientific realm over the last years. And I don't mean last years in the last 5. I'm talking about the last century, right? There's so much that has been uncovered in technology, and if you take it back to a long way back, you know, if we go back 100 years right now, and we start asking ourselves, you know, what happened in 1923? Okay, let's jump forward 25 years or 20 more years. What happened in 1943? What happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, whenever we struck oil? What happened when the fossil fuels were discovered? That's the world that we work in. And one of the points that I want to make is during those times when we were discovering and we were developing and we were learning, we did what was called knowledge share. In other words, men got together over a cup of coffee, maybe a stiffer drink sometimes, and they shared knowledge. They didn't get up in each other's face and go, you get in my territory or you get in my business, or if you get mine. It was, how did you do that? Because there weren't enough people to handle the amount of work that needed to be done. It's still that way today. There's not enough people to handle the amount of work that needs to be done.
Well, especially I think that depends on the industry.
Yeah.
Like since the housing market crashed in 2008, we've in America we have 4 million less homes than the demand is for.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of banks have been kind of weird to allow new construction and stuff like that. There hasn't been a lot of home builders, but then over, I don't know, between COVID and now, it's like these home builders are coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
These pool builders are coming out of nowhere. You know, you have all these contractors. HVAC is another big one to where there's not enough people in the space, but when someone does, they're like, I'm gonna start the business.
Yeah.
You know, so like that pendulum is gonna swing between that supply and demand.
It will. Yeah. Yeah, it always does. In reference to our industry, that kind of the idea though is, and that's, get my thoughts together here. That's really the basis of how we attack things as far as TPS is we believe that if we share, then that comes back to us tenfold. And sometimes, like you and I were discussing, pushing that opportunity, or at least bringing in the partner or the knowledge of your competitor. Now, don't get me wrong, we're all in business for a reason, right? We need to pay taxes. Yeah, I hate to say that one first, but we have to pay our bills. We need monetary value so that we can live in this world and everything else. It's not like we didn't, when we were working for somebody else, Braden, we weren't going to work because we wanted them to have the greatest life that they could ever have. And then we would just take the crumbs that were left over. No, we were going to work. We were wanting to be good for our employer because they were going to pay us in return. We needed that payment. So, we don't take the monetary value out of our work. It's valuable, but we don't let that almighty dollar drive the vision. We don't let that drive the decision. We're very responsible with the dollar associated with the project, but we're more responsible with the outcome for the customer.
And I've heard that when you take care of your people, the dollar follows.
That's right. That's right. It's one of the first things my dad taught me was you take care of people, money will always take care of itself. I grew up on a little farm in the panhandle of Oklahoma, a little house on the prairie type life. Yeah, 5 generations. I was 5th generation on my family farm, and we lived the lifestyle where if we got done cutting wheat and the thunderstorm was coming and the weatherman said that there's hail in it, we drove the combine down the road and we helped our neighbor cut their wheat, and we didn't ask them to repay us in fuel. Right? We just took care of each other in the countryside. You left your doors open. The keys were in all the vehicles.
My fiance does that. She leaves her car unlocked all the time, and sometimes she's left her keys or her purse in there. And I'm like, listen, but she grew up out in the country like that.
That's right.
Down in Biggs. There's not a whole lot, and trust me, you don't want to walk on someone's property if they don't know you. Like if they don't recognize your car. My buddy was like that. He he kind of lives down south of Glenpool, and we drove my fiance's car, and he's like, I almost freaked out because I didn't know who you guys were driving my property.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You get out into that type of atmosphere and everything. You got more people watching your house than what you have in your own family watching it. Everybody's watching out for each other. But that's the essence. I mean, to me, that's the American dream.
Why is it that when you get into the city, that people are just the closer that people get physically, right? They just lose that. Like the countryside, you definitely get that vibe. But when you get into, apartment complexes, people are weird,
Yeah, well, my family annoys me every once in a while. I think you get too close to each other and then you're forced to sit on top of each other in an apartment complex. I mean, everybody's don't get me wrong, but, I have a customer that's out there. I love them to death. I have their best interest in mind. I'm going to do whatever I need to for them. But if I'm being real, there's some of them that annoy me, right? You can be annoying, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it breaks down the relationship, right?
Sure.
And so I think what tends to happen to us as a society And we can, kind of like you said, we never know where this is going to go,
Oh
right?
yeah.
What tends to happen to us as a society is we stop looking out for the other person and we let our annoying behavior start to take over. And next thing a question that I was going to ask you earlier is, what's the difference between a partner or somebody that you might bring in and a competitor? I mean, if a competitor can be your partner and you can collaborate with them and you can yoke yourself together and accomplish a task, that's what humanity needs to be about, right? We
Yeah.
can't solve all
Yeah.
the world problems, but if we see everything as a competition, in other words, I'm getting mine and everybody's out to get me, and we're in a pessimistic thought process, yeah, we're going to have the apartment complex where everybody hates each other because guess what? This world is only getting tighter and tighter and tighter with people. And if we just concentrate on the annoying behavior, you know, we're all going to be competitors.
I would say the difference between a partner and a competitor would be that one, we have a mutual agreement
Yeah.
that, and we have a relationship somewhat established, right? I know who you are, you know who I am at bare minimum. And there's a mutual agreement that's like, hey, if I have a client and you hear something, let me know.
Yeah.
That to me is a good partner.
Yep.
Maybe we get together and we brainstorm on, hey, here's some of the clients that I'm working with. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah.
You know, that maybe I could bring you in on. I'd be happy to bring you on. If you're going to contribute to one of my clients, I'll share the bread,
That's right.
right? And then vice versa. Like if you open up your network, I'll open up my network. Like there was a buddy of mine. He's a commercial insurance agent, and so I opened up some of my network to him. We went through some people that I know, and I was like, well, you know, like let me see maybe who would be a good fit for you, and let me just send an introductory email. If something happens, great, and if not, great. But
Yeah.
like he's a good partner.
Yeah.
You know.
We use the TPS as an engineering company. We do all of the engineering on our projects and everything, and obviously we have our equipment. So we design it, we draw it, but then I go to the keyword manufacture it, right? I do not, as an owner of TPS, I do not employ welders, fabricators, or anything like that. We don't have a fabrication shop. Tulsa is a manufacturing hub for oil and gas for the entire world. And
Which is amazing.
It
like
is.
Tulsa, of all places, which is like a little under 1 million people.
Yep.
And the things that Tulsa supplies is incredible.
Well, if you think about it, what sprouted up Tulsa, well, Glenpool. If you say the word Glenpool was actually, that was one of the original oil wells that was struck, and it achieved its name Glenpool because that was the formation, that was the oil field that was a launch, and of course it was on the other side of the river, right? And so
wait, Glenpool was on the other side of the river?
Glenpool,
Well, it kind of is. Okay.
Yeah,
It wasn't on the towards the Bixby side.
well, I mean, it's
Or the
where
mountains.
Glenpool's at right now. It's Glenpool.
Okay, all right.
And I say on the other side of the river.
Because
on
we're
the wrong
over
side.
there. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're
I
over
was
there. Where am I
confused.
sitting at? Right. So either way, from the Arkansas River where it's sitting at, but Glenpool itself was hit my mic there. Glenpool itself was established because that's the first oil field that was established in the Tulsa area, and of course, one of the biggest booms of the Tulsa area was oil, right? And that's what really launched this place. And you can get into a lot of historical information. There's some really good books that are out there about the history of Tulsa and the oil boom and everything, and how everything just started growing in the state of Oklahoma, and then how that spread into the Northeast. One of the interesting things, the Pipeliners Union, all right? You think of pipeline. The Pipeliners Union was originated here in Tulsa. So if you think that the central hub, my wife, Lori, her granddad was a pipeline welder. And he lived in Missouri for a while. He lived here in Tulsa for a while. He moved to Arizona, and he finished and retired, in different areas. But her granddad was a welder. He was a pipeline welder, and he was part of the Pipeliners Union. And he would come in every once in a while to Tulsa for the union meetings and that kind of stuff. So you start thinking about the history of Tulsa. Pipeliners Union, manufacturing hub. Then you start thinking about companies like CE Natco and this guy. These are the people that wrote the book on processing fossil fuels that came out of the ground. It didn't exist. It's like NASA.
So
Okay.
you in your business, if you were to pick any city to start in, Tulsa would be a great city in your space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great place to sit. You know how much knowledge exists in this city.
Tell me, is there a number?
There's not a, you know, that number that just keeps reoccurring,
Yeah,
right? That you
just
put
keeps
one on one,
going.
it just keeps going. That's kind of the way it is. And that's the beauty. You know, I didn't even realize it. I've been in oil and gas. I didn't even want to be in oil and gas, by the way. I moved away. I grew up, my dad was in oil and gas. I would go out with him when he'd get called out. And, you know, sometimes I'd be the one keeping my foot on the gas on the pickup while we had the exhaust hose because he was thawing out something on the oil rig or this or that. And you know, a lot of times we would finish opening Christmas presents and Dad would leave and have to go to work. And I was like, I'm there. And there was times during the 70s and 80s, you know, well, really 80s, he would come home. He's like, well, they're going to have another layoff. I don't know if I have a job next week. And I thought, well, who wants to be in this? So lo and behold, I ended up back in the oil field after I became an electrician. But you come back in, well, now all of a sudden in this situation, my dad is like one of my Yodas. He's one of the guys that has so much knowledge whenever it comes to how to deal with this fossil fuel, how to do this, how to do that. Then I moved to Tulsa, and I think I've lived in Oklahoma for the majority of my life. How did I never understand being in the panhandle of Oklahoma that this was a manufacturing hub for the world? You know, that the port of Catoosa is there so that they can load things onto barges and take it out in international waterways and actually take it to other countries. You know, my company that I came to work for, ETI, was that way. I mean, they loaded things onto barges. So anyway, the knowledge of being able to find answers to your problems, it's everywhere. So if you think about knowledge share, how do you become good at being able to do what you need to do, especially in the industry that we're in? So go back to 3 guys starting a company, right? Okay. I'm not an engineer. Daniel wasn't an engineer, but I've been operating stuff for most of my career. He's been building stuff for all of his career. And then we combine that with bringing in the veterans of the industry as employees of ours, which we worked for them or with them. Now all of a sudden they work for us. And we say, hey, we want to keep doing what you guys always did. And we just want to make sure that we take care of the customer while we do it. And so now we gain the trust back from the customer, and we've exercised the expertise in what we know how to do. And, you know, that's veering back towards, you know, what we were talking about, customer service. But yeah, you know, you can't do something if you're not skilled in doing it, right? You have to develop the expertise over time. And I was always told, you know what the definition of wisdom is? Wisdom is actually failure. So wisdom is actually failure. When you fail and then you correct it, then you plant the seed of wisdom. So
Those cameras, they stop recording
yeah,
the 30 minutes. The A7 IIIs do. So
you knew what you were getting into whenever you asked me to be on a podcast.
yeah, I did. Oh yeah. So our podcast, we usually record for about an hour,
Okay.
a little under 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
So
I thought whenever you said 30 minutes, you know, I was sitting there going, yeah, I don't even know that I can form a complete thought the way that I talk about things in 20 to 25 minutes.
yeah, no. And yeah, most of these podcasts, there's no way we can cover what we cover in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes like we do part 2s. So like
Yeah.
if there's, you know, some things that we take notes on from today and we're like, we should really elaborate on this, then we could schedule a part 2 for sure.
Right.
So we're actually, we're in season 4.
Mhm.
Season 4. We're about to hit season 4. I got to look at the publishing schedule, but season 5 will probably start right around Christmas.
Oh, wow.
40 episodes.
Mercy.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, about 40 hours worth.
Yeah.
40 to 50. So, okay, take a little bit of a step back because there's something that you've made comments about, the IBEW apprenticeship program. What is that?
IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So if you think of union,
Mhm.
and before anybody out there on the podcast world gets all upset and turns me off because, oh, he just said union and everybody's striking right now. IBEW does not have, I joined the electrical union. I'll back up. I joined the electrical union because I wanted to be an electrical engineer in college. After I dropped out of college, then I got married and we had our first child. We moved to Wichita, Kansas, and I needed to be a responsible husband and I needed a job and I needed to raise a family. And, prior to those experiences in life, I made a lot of very bad decisions and a lot of bad mistakes and everything. So it was time to grow up, be responsible. And so I joined, I had a little bit of electrical knowledge and electrical experience. So I went and joined the IBW, Local 271, Wichita, Kansas. You walk into the Union Hall, and I asked them, I said, hey, I'd like to join the electrical union. And they said, do you have any experience? And so you have to be voted in and everything. So you kind of put in an application, all that kind of stuff. And they said, well, have you thought about joining the IBW apprenticeship program? Now I had about, let me back up a little bit, give you one piece of information. In between me leaving college and getting married, I became an electrical apprentice for out in the local area, around my hometown and stuff like that, answering jobs in the newspaper. And I got a job with Seaboard with a electrical company building a feed mill. I answered a job in the paper. I loved it. After that, I got a job at Seaboard in Guyman, and I was a scale technician. So I would calibrate all of the scales inside the pork processing plant every morning at 4 o'clock before they started production, and then I would do odds and ends, kind of maintenance electrician type stuff. And then I met my wife and over in Plains, and we lived there for a year. And I worked for Valley Sprinkler Systems, so the big land sprinklers, center pivot land sprinklers. So I wired sprinklers for a living and troubleshooted those for about a year. So I had electrical experience. So I come into the union and walk into the union hall, and they said, well, looks to me like you've got about 3 or 4 years of experience. How about we just clear you out as a journeyman? That means that you get paid more money. A journeyman is a licensed electrician. We'll let you clear out as a journeyman and we'll give you 1 year to pass your journeyman certification test. That equated to getting paid $21.50 an hour in 1997.
Which now is probably 75.
Yeah, I think that their scale's like 31, 32, somewhere around there right now as a journeyman.
It's not that big a difference.
Yeah, it's not that big of a difference. Uh,
So,
anyway,
anyways, yeah.
yeah, fleeting thought there. Maybe need to advocate for the IBW.
Yeah, we do.
There we go. But no, if I would say that it was probably the very first profound time in my life that I took a step back and tried to make a right decision versus a wrong decision. And like I said, I made a lot of wrong decisions leading up to me getting married. I asked them, I said, well, if I go into your apprenticeship program, what would we do there? And they said, well, that scale is $9 an hour. I already have one child, and my wife wants to go back and take night classes because she had left college at the time being, and she was trying to enter back in to be a teacher. And I was like, I can't live on that. So we made a deal, and I told him, I said, I would like to learn to study. I want to learn. I want to go through the apprenticeship program because I want the knowledge. I decided to seek knowledge instead of payment. And on that, they said, well, here's what we could do. With your experience, we will actually pay you fourth year wages, which ended up being I don't know, it was like $12 an hour versus $9 an hour. It wasn't much, and they said, but you're going to be locked into that scale until your class reaches fourth year. And then you will get a raise after that. And I said, deal. So now I had to apply for the apprenticeship program, and I had to get accepted by the committee and all that kind of stuff. So I entered the 5-year, 5-year long apprenticeship program. You work 40 hours a week. That's part of your training. It's required. Then you go to school 3 nights a week, and for about 3.5 hours, 3 nights a week. And that's part of the IBW NJATC. That's National Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee. So that's the contractors negotiating with the IBEW, the workers, and together they form this unionized trade school. Okay. So I took a 5-year apprenticeship program, and I didn't get a raise for the first 4 years. But the decision that I made gained street credit in the eyes of the men that I worked with. So next thing, I found myself getting pulled by this journeyman. He's like, hey, come on, you're going to come work with me. No, get out of the ditch. Come on, we're going to go run conduit. No, get out of the ditch. We're going to go pull wire. Oh, we got to go terminate these things. So I'm giving you kind of the grunt work versus the higher end work in the field that I was studying, right? And what happened was that guys saw that I didn't take the easy way out, and I didn't take the dollar bill. And therefore, they started bestowing their knowledge into me. And that became a launching pad. I get a little emotional about that because that's truly a launching pad in my life. I really made a profound decision at that time, and I chose the harder road.
Was it a struggle for
It was.
the family?
It was. You know, we talked to the kids today. Of course, we've got Maddie, who works for you, who's my daughter-in-law. Love her to death. Want to throw a shout out to Maddie there.
Shout out.
I
need to make that a sound effect button because we do that all the time, but I need to make it like a little epic. I don't know what do I do. Shout out. Or some echo or something, or make it like shout out. I don't know. I think it'd be cool to like almost do like a yell out.
I might blow the mic up if I shout out, you know. But no, I tell the kids all the time. We tell stories about when we lived in Wichita, Kansas, and I made $450 every 2 weeks. And we had to choose between buying groceries and paying an electricity bill at times. Luckily, I had family that helped, you know. Every once in a while, my parents would show up. They'd drive 4.5 hours and come visit us. And, of course, they didn't want to leave until they completely stocked all the cupboards and filled the refrigerator. And all of a sudden, there's $500 laying on the table. And it's like, no, take this. And they're like, nah, you know, we know what it's like.
Do you ever think about what it would be like if you did take the dollar instead? What the lifestyle, what different choices that would be made because you had the opportunity to take that extra pay,
you know,
but you didn't.
If I'm being honest, I could very well still be in Wichita, Kansas, making $32 an hour. No offense against those that aren't, but I don't know. It's a mindset. Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, the resilience that we're talking about, you know, the topic of this discussion, the resilience and the faith behind it. There's so many definitions of faith. You know, my faith is in God, but my faith is also in things that are outside of my control.
You had faith when you start the apprenticeship. I can't say that, apprenticeship, that you were going to come out of that better than just having that extra dollar.
That's right.
You were like, okay, I'm going to take the harder route, but I got faith that it's going to pay out in the long run.
Leading up to me joining the apprenticeship is, you know, the biggest success that I had ever had was marrying my wife. Every one of us better say that, right?
And it's hard to pitch in as like, just with your kind of spirit that you had then, you weren't the only one sacrificing.
Right.
You know, as a husband, as a father, you know, your son, one son at the time.
That's right. Tristan was born.
It was one. And then your wife, like your family sacrificed and also put faith in you, hoping that you knew what you were doing and that you were making the right decision, not just for yourself but for your family.
That's right. Yeah.
Hmm.
It was some sort of a black hole, you know.
Do you ever feel um, grateful or overwhelmed with whatever that term is, to where those people that endure you and they trust you with their life, and you make a decision like that one, and some could say that would be a small decision or a big decision.
Right.
But do you ever feel some type of way when those people close to you put that kind of trust into you? Do you ever
It's
feel a combination of guilt and pride?
it is a combination of great joy to have people trust your instinct and trust your judgment regardless of what they think, and follow,
Because they could
along.
disagree.
Yeah,
Very
that's
well
right. They could
They could be like,
disagree.
I wouldn't do that,
You know,
or whatever they would say, right?
I guess I should probably say, I didn't make this decision just solely upon my own. My wife and I, we did discuss this, but
But you're a
it-
team in it.
we're a
you
team.
know.
That's
Mhm.
right. Our children didn't get a say so, but today I use these as teaching techniques for them to say sometimes the hard decision is the right decision. And because the reason why the hard decision is the right decision is because there's something great on the other side of hard. Every time. There's always something great on the other side of hard if we look for it. People call it silver lining. The faith-based person is going to call it a blessing. All it's just whenever you define that hard leads to greatness, then you stop really kind of dwelling on how hard this is getting. Now, I'm definitely not here. There are people who have a lot harder things in life than what I've ever had to deal with. But the I asked myself whether or not I would mention this on the podcast. The biggest mistake of my life landed me incarcerated at the age of 21 years old. And, the world says that I have to check a box that says, I was convicted of a felony because I was part of stealing things out of the place of employment that I worked. And that's probably part two, right? I won't tie up all of our time with all of that, but that was prior to me meeting my wife.
But if those who are listening, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean it's over.
That's right. That's right. This world does not get the liberty to define who you're going to become. And that's really where the resilience comes from. You can lay down and you can waller in it, or you can find ways, even outside of your own abilities sometimes, to rise up, find a way to rise up, find a way to be resilient. I know Sean Busby. He's you should look him up if you don't know him. Shout out to Sean. I hope you see that, or I hope you hear this on the podcast. But Sean was the son of Carol, who I worked with at ETI, and I got the liberty of meeting him and her whenever I worked there. And Sean has his own story, but he is the owner of Fit Camp 180 in Edmond. And they have like 3 locations now, and it's called a fitness family, and it's Christ-centered and everything else. And Sean's just got amazing a story about going through drug addiction, this and that and everything else. And it's just, to the outside person looking at what he has built in his business, you would go, oh my gosh, look, he gets to go to all these parties, and they got to train the Thunder cheerleading team.
He did it right.
He did it right, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, well, look back at his story. But Sean, I save his one YouTube video where he's sitting there and he's talking to the group of people. He's got 25, 30 people. They just finished a hard workout. And he sits there and he says, I go out every morning, and these things make me emotional, man. And I talk about these things, I get choked up. He says, I go out every morning and I look at Lake Hefner. He runs around Lake Hefner. And he says, I look at that daunting task. And he says, that's a huge lake, and there's no way I can run around that. He says, But if I will just take one more step, and then I'll take one more step, and maybe I have a partner next to me that whenever I can't go any further, that they take one more step and they encourage me. He says, and we just keep taking one more step and another step. He says, all of a sudden, we take a step back and we look,
You've made it all the way around the lake.
and we made it all the way around the lake. And that is so profound about resilience. You're going to get knocked down. You got to get up. And if you'll just take a step, okay, you can come to a dead end in stuff. I sat in a prison cell at the age of 21, wanting nothing but my mom. And I had no idea. At 25 years later, I would be sitting in the city owning a company after I flunked out of college and had a felony record. Though the world says I don't deserve to be here. The world says, no, that person doesn't get that. But it's resilience. It's faith. My faith in God. God blesses, you know, and like I said, we can do a part 2, part 3, part 4. We can go however deep into this you want. But the whole point about the resilience and the step forward and everything else is it's just like my dad raising me, you know. There's so many profound statements in my life. I'm 51 years old now, and I was that 17-year-old kid that didn't want to hear it. It's like, oh, come on, you're just old. Well, now I'm the old guy, right? Now I'm the 51-year-old guy here going, well, wait a second. I just want to tell you a story. And I'm going to let you decide whether or not you think it's real. But I can tell you with tangible evidence that it works. And now I'm at a point in my life where I own a company, and we had people go, you're kidding, right? What makes you think you can do what we do? Those were literally words that were said to us. And we're 5 years old, and we're rocking it. And it's not because we know how to do everything. It's because we employ the team to accomplish the task, but more so, I have a relationship with my customer. I asked you a question. I said, what's the difference between a competitor and a partner? It's a relationship. I can have a relationship with my competitor, and he can be my partner in one project, and he can be my competitor in another project. But at the end of the day, he and I are both successful and resilient because we know how teamwork works, and we know how customer service works. You know, the question of the day is, can you truly do what's in the best interest of the customer, even if it costs you the money that you could make?
Is that what you would define for true customer service?
I would. True customer service is not attaching a dollar to the decision that you make on their best behalf. You know, this podcast walks me back into the root of that. I made that decision in the apprenticeship to choose the harder decision. It was going to take more time. There was less payback, but it was the right choice. And it had the best payout. I make those decisions. We make those decisions in TBS to not attach money to the decision as the root. Yes, we're responsible to make sure that we don't do something foolishly for what we've been entrusted with, right? But sometimes there's a bigger payback in the long run than there is in the moment if you'll make the hard decision. And that's what I think comes down to, if we talk about true customer service, there's times that I do things because that's what I would expect as a customer. They don't necessarily know what it costs me all the time. I'll give you one of the biggest testimonies of our business. Started off as our company, right? We landed a very substantial contract to build some dehydration equipment. And we shout out to Tim Smith there. If you're out there, Tim, maybe you'll get a copy of this or whatever. But This is one of those milestones that I'll take all the way until the day that I take my last breath as a testimony to teach people. Tim walked in and he asked us if we could build this equipment for him. And we said yes. And so we went through all of the stages and everything, and we established a master service agreement with a major gas company in West Virginia. And they issued us a PO. And that PO was in the multiple millions of dollars. And Tim told me to my face one day, he said, if you mess this up, we're all kicking rocks. And I thought, oh man, I can't believe that we're doing this. I mean, we walked through the black hole to start a company, but now we're fixing to foster a project that it's like, yeah. And so anyway, we went through the project. Everything went good. We loaded it on trucks 35 weeks later, sent it all up to West Virginia. They're setting it in place. It's a while before they start it up, and I get a phone call. And he says, hey, we got a problem.
Oh, no.
And I said, what's wrong? And he says, well, we got rust blooming up. So basically the paint thickness on this piece of equipment, multiple pieces of equipment, he said it's not thick enough. And the problem is that we didn't do our due diligence. We rather than us taking the responsibility and having the final call, we allowed our contractor to have the final say so because we were pushing so hard and so fast and everything else. And it's only our own fault that we didn't go behind and check work and everything else. Make a long story short, we ended up with equipment setting up in West Virginia and to the value of about $2.5 million. And the entire thing had to be completely uninsulated, sandblasted down, repainted, and re-insulated.
But you couldn't haul it back,
We
right?
could have hauled it back, but
But that would have been a lot more expensive than
Oh, yeah.
sending a
Yeah.
crew out there.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's what you did. You sent a crew and
So we partnered with one of our companies here in Tulsa,
a
and
competitor.
no, it's actually one of our fabrication companies that we use. And the guys at ISTI, don't mind shouting out their name there. The guys at ISTI and everything, the owners, they sent a crew up to West Virginia. They have crews that go mobile, so we mobilized them, sent them up, got them on site. They got started on their work and got about 2 weeks into it. Now all of this happened at the peak of COVID, and I got
Great.
Yeah.
Because we know a lot of people hurt during that time.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
one of them.
So if you had a sound bite right now's the time that you're like, dun 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 dun, right? COVID, Danny's worst nightmare. We're all kicking rocks. And I got a phone call from the guys at STI, and they said, we got to bring our crews home because COVID outbreak up in the Northeast is severe. We can't leave them up there, and everybody's got to come home. And I had no plan, but I have failure written all over the biggest project that we've ever done in 2019. So we're barely a year old. And long story short, after I had a nervous breakdown at my house, then we started mobilizing crews, trying to find people local up there. God jumped through so many hoops to make things that were impossible become possible. And at the end of the day, I'll keep this part short, is we ended up building tents around these things. We corrected the actions. We fixed all of the flaws. We redid everything and brought them up to specification where they were supposed to be and everything else. And came a couple months later, we started them up, and I went up there for a week-long startup and everything. We started them up. Everything ran great. Startups were great and everything. And I was fixing to leave location, get on an airplane the next day and come home. And I kind of, like a kid, yes, I know. I just messed up. I kind of walked up to
The walk of shame.
the walk of shame. That's right. The walk of shame. I walked up to Tim, with this proverbial head held low, and I was like, I already know. And he looked at me. He's like, "It's all right." I said, "It's not all right. This was our responsibility, and you trusted us with it, and we failed." He said, "You didn't fail." He said, "Yeah, things failed along the way." He says, "But look, they're fixed, they're running, and everything's fine." He says, "What you don't understand is that this situation went all the way to the top of this company." And he says, "And nobody has ever taken the corrective actions to fix their mess ups like you guys did." The dollar amount is insane that it cost us to repair that.
Did you lose money on that job?
We did,
Been there, done that.
but it was the right decision. We knew what it was going to cost. We didn't even figure the cost before we mobilized the crews. We just sent them. And then whenever they had to come home, then I started scrambling, and I found local people up there that I didn't even know. And I said, "I need you, and I need to trust you." And they came in, they said, "We'll take care of you. And at the end of the day, we'll tally up the total whenever it's done. I don't care. We got to fix this." So we made a decision not based upon, well, what's the most economical way to do this? Somewhat. We could bring them back, way too expensive. Figure out how to fix them up there. I mean, I guess I can't say that we didn't entertain it, but at the end of the day, it was still fix the problem, take care of the customer. So whenever I say true customer service, what I want to tell the listener out there is you can talk about having true customer service, but are you willing to take the financial hit to provide true customer service in the faith that it will come back to you tenfold? Because it does. Every time. And I could do part 10 and tell you another story.
Part 10 on that one. Okay, so before we wrap a few things up, wrap up this wonderful episode. Fantastic episode.
Sorry, I did all the talking.
No, you're good. That's what it's for. So I ask a question
Okay.
to just about everybody. And the question is, for those that are wanting to get started in business, is it better to just get started and figure it out, or is it best to cover your ass? And what I mean by cover your ass, as in making sure that you have a relationship with legal, financial, bookkeeping, accounting, CPA, whatever. You've kind of established some history. You kind of know what you're about to get into.
Right.
So you've maybe done an apprenticeship, or you've created a network of people that you know in that industry or in that business field that you're going into. Have you got your bookkeeping software? Have you have some of those foundational things to make you operate smoother or look a certain way or feel a certain way?
Right.
Or is it like got my logo off of a Word document, and we don't send invoices, and I just take payments over Venmo? You know what I mean? So it's like, just get started. Just go out there and start selling.
That's
Because I'll give you my
both.
answer.
If all I can tell you in our experience, it's not like we walked in and resigned without sitting down and actually drafting a plan of, do we think that we can do this? Yes, we did that. We did not. We developed a business plan. So I would say it to the average listener out there is, if somebody says, "Hey, take this drug," will you just take it? You know, "Hey, take this and it'll take your headache away."
God,
Over the counter.
entrepreneurship's a drug, isn't it?
Yeah, not illegal drugs, by the way. Let's just verify that. We're talking about prescription drugs or over the counter. "Hey, just go take this," right? Are you the type of person that just goes and does what somebody says, or are you or you fly around with your, seat of your pants and you just randomly do stuff? Now, if my wife hears this, she's going to say, "Yeah, you kind of sort of do that every once in a while." Like, I'm the radical guy in our company, right? I'm the risk taker. Barrett, he's the, we need to plan this. We
You're
need
the
to
gas, he's
pre-plan
the
it.
brakes.
That's right. I am the gas. and I have an unlimited supply. Like I have an endless amount in the tank, and his brakes wear out sometimes. So I'm sure maybe he'll listen to this. He'll get a good laugh out of that. Daniel Hovegger, he's my other business partner. He like sits in the middle, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm the driver. I have the steering wheel.
Looks at
I
mom and dad like,
Yeah, I wish that I had the gas pedal and I wish I had the brake pedal, but I don't get either one of those. They're in the back seat, but I'm supposed to steer this thing. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. But to get back to your question and really give a true answer, to start a business, you have to take a risk. It needs to be an educated risk, but it can't be in the middle of taking an educated risk. In other words, pre-planning, having a market, right? Some of the basics of I'm going to start a company. Well, I'm not going to start a company and build gadget A if nobody wants gadget A and you see no need for gadget A. And what does gadget A do? Well, it was just my idea. Well, what's it do? I don't know. I mean, that's like the worst case scenario, right? So you have to establish a market idea. Is there a market? Is there a need? Is there a customer? Okay. Yes. Now you have to take some educated risks, right? Do I have the money? No. Okay. Don't do the business. Do I have a logo? No. Don't do the business. Next thing you know, you're in this pessimistic, almost conspiracy that I'm gonna convince myself of all the reasons not to do this business. Don't do that. I can't imagine if I would have succumbed. Is that even a word? Did I even pronounce that right?
is now.
If I would have even given in. It's my worst fear in a podcast. It's like you just sounded like a doofus. But if I would have given in to the things that I was afraid of, if I was going to do that, then I never would have done this. Here's the crazy thing. Be brave. Be resilient. And be determined. And what I mean by that is that's easy to do once you have started the business. You talk about brand and the software and this and that. Yeah, I'm less of the planner. It's like, let's go do the work, because I have this philosophy. Who you are today is not who you will be tomorrow. All right. You'll look back and you'll be like, whew, that's who we were 5 years ago. I sit there, we were having conversations like, we need to put this in place, because if these people that are cutting us $1 million POs come in, they're going to be like, this is where it all happens.
See, it also kind of depends on different industries, but
Yeah.
I'm more on the cover your ass side, because I've seen the ass inside.
Yeah.
I've been through some very troubling things, and I'm like, okay,
That's right.
I should have covered my ass on this.
Yeah.
Insurance being one of them. Like I was just, I don't know, it was something stupid. It was like 2 months shy of having this issue covered. This lawsuit, my partner caused me to get into, and 2 months shy of making sure of having insurance cover it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe I should have gotten that insurance, liability or whatever it was, when I started, because I would have been covered, and that was expensive. And then there's also other issues, just making sure, like the legal standpoint, like making sure you have a mutually beneficial contract. Think from your standpoint and the customers. So try to make sure you got good contracts for those in the service industry, right? And I don't know, even good invoices, a decent logo.
Yeah.
Think through a lot of that stuff, like especially being in marketing and advertising. I over the last 3 to 5 years, I've become to value more the logos and the branding and the fonts. Like all that has become so much more valued than just
Absolutely.
here's something just thrown together, because it's supposed to evoke emotion, and it creates consistency and everything. And I'm like, if I start another business, like when I started Blue Studio, I thought through the whole idea of the logo and stuff.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of what this business would represent, and what I want it to sound like, and what I want it to look like, and the feels and the vibes and all that. So this could be its own thing. And I'm like, okay, I should have done this for student marketing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I think about, okay, if there's something else I'm going to do, I want to do that same process, because I can then find my target customer a lot easier, a lot faster, and
Yeah.
then close a lot easier and retain them better. Like I feel like some of those initial things, and then of course, like if we started doing business, but then you just paid me via Venmo and you
Mhm.
never got a receipt or never got an invoice or there's no tracking or all this stuff, like you'd be like, okay, is this guy legit?
Yeah.
Is this team legit? Like are they what?
Yeah.
So like there's some of that cover your ass stuff to where I'm like definitely get started. Don't just bury yourself and be like, okay, this is 100 reasons why it's not going to happen.
Right.
But have that resilience, that persistence, and like go make it happen, but do your homework. Just like what you said about the market thing, make sure there's a market out there for it. Know who your competitors are, or partners, right? Either one, and know what they offer. Try to create a competitive advantage. Why are you starting a business? Do you know what you're getting into? Are you expected to exit the business at some point and it just be you?
Right.
Is that how you're going to retire, or you're going to try to sell it? And if you're going to try to sell it, okay, well then you need assets and you need customers, recurring customers, and good relationships and stuff like that. And you need employees.
Yep.
You can't sell a business that doesn't have recurring customers. Then I don't know.
So when you started your first business, what were you doing? What was your regular everyday job? Was your business on the side,
When I start,
or did you bail and just go straight into self-employment?
It was, and I was about 12 years old.
I think yeah. Actually, I listened to kind of your own personal podcast,
Yeah.
and everything about that. But I'm talking
I don't know
about
if those are legit. No.
like
But
your true monetary value job coming in, your career job.
So that was
you're
sooner-
working for the man, right?
Yep. So it was BK Integral Marketing,
Okay.
and I was like, I'm going to do marketing for my customers, and I'm going to make sure that I do it to the best of my ability. And it's just me, and I'm going to make sure we're integral while we do it.
Yeah.
And make sure we communicate, and be transparent, and actually be a partner. And it's been that way for the last 10. I try to do my best to make sure it's that way for the last 10 years. And I did it on the side when I came back from New York. I was doing some of that stuff on the side still, and I had for about 2 years had a couple jobs, and then while I was doing it on the side, I was like able to bring in some revenue to where I just kept it in the business.
Yeah.
Very little expenses when it's just you for most people. And one day I was like, okay, I've got, I think it was like $7,500. And I was like, okay, so I can afford to pay myself for like 3 or 4 months. I'm going to quit. That was it. And I had a laptop and I was good to go.
There you go.
So that's for $7,500. I was like, all right, I can survive for 3 or 4 months, and I'm just going to go out there and cold call and knock on doors. And
yeah.
And I was doing jobs for $500, and they were for what I was doing at the time. It was valued at that. It was good.
Yeah.
But
you had faith in what you were pursuing, because you did do some homework, right? You knew what you were getting into, and
I did work for several marketing agencies.
That's right. Right.
Some big ones.
So so kind of answering our own question here, you're not going to just radically go out and do something that you're not equipped to do or educated to do, or at least have a knowledge to do.
Yeah.
Or,
You should stay in your lane of what you know.
There
if
you go.
If you can't do it yourself, don't start it.
There you go. There you go. That's and so that's that kind of preparedness rather than radical behavior, right?
Yeah.
Now, do we still have a few minutes, or do we got to cut this off?
We got 2 minutes.
We got 2 minutes, so I want you to entertain this, and you'll probably want to do a part 2 on this. Now, I want you to imagine this idea: 50-year-old man, wife, 2 boys in college. Actually, not 50-year-old man. We got to go back 5 years. So I'm 51 now. So what was that put me? 46. So 46-year-old man, wife, all the debt of living in the house and everything in Owasso/Tulsa, 2 boys in college, paying for their college and everything else. And the day I walked in to resign my employment, I didn't have $7,500 in the savings account. I was pretty much forking out all of the money to everything that life was handing me at the time between all of our expenses and college tuitions, and Taryn was living in Edmond and everything else, and he had a house over there, and of course I didn't want to put them in debt because I knew what it was like to be in debt. And so either way, the day I walked in to resign our jobs, and by the way, we can multiply this times 3 of us, we call it, the 3 of us call it walking through the black hole. We walked in, we resigned, we told them what we were doing. The company that we worked for was a very substantial company. There's a good potential that we could even get some legal letters as a result of this, because we were going to start our and form our own company to compete directly against them, and we told them that. And so the day that we did our exit interview and we walked out the door, but walking into that office, I walked in, and essentially this is what I told the VP. This is not exactly what I told him, but this is what we told him in our minds. I no longer want my paycheck. I no longer want my pension plan. I no longer want my 401k plan with the match. I no longer want my paid vacation. I no longer want my company credit card. I no longer
Health
want
insurance.
Huh?
Health insurance.
I no longer want my health insurance. I know we got 2 minutes. I no longer
Oh
want.
no, I was telling you, no more health
Yeah.
insurance. Yeah.
Yeah. I no longer want all of the benefits of being tied to being accountable to you as my employer, and all the benefits that you give me for accounting myself to being tied to you. I walked out that door, and we walked into an empty office, and we looked at each other and went,
Oops.
well, we just did this. The comparison that I make, and the reason why I asked you that question, is you were like, hey, I got $7,500. Let's do this. It's just me. The level of responsibility that we were all carrying as fathers, you're a new father. You look at those kids. I made that same decision again. Is this just not a level of insanity?
Well, like the video I showed you where the guy, one of the guests here, he was like, you got to be a little crazy.
You got to be a little crazy. And that's why I say you can plan. If you're starting a business, you can plan. But if you're walking out and walking into an entrepreneurship, and you're walking away from organized slavery, right? Probably not a good word to use on a podcast. But either way, you get paid to be there, and you get told what you're going to do and when you can do it and everything else. I'm going to go be my own person, and I'm going to be in charge of my future and my welfare and my family and everything else myself. But you have to walk through that hole. And there's no other word other than faith that you get to put on that. There's not another word in the language that ties to that. And you don't even have to be a theist or religious or anything else to tie the word faith to that black hole that you have to walk through. You can plan it. We planned for a long time on paper. What does this look like? What's it going to cost? Can we do this? Do we have the resources? What's the market? This, that, and everything else. This went on for almost a year, that we were thinking about this idea, because we saw the deterioration of what was happening. We saw a market developing and an opportunity developing, and we're like, hey, somebody's going to take this. We should go do this. But we did it more because we felt bad for the customer, right? And this sounds bad on the podcast because it didn't make the company a bad company. It just made them, the lane that they were in was just a hard lane to be in, right? But at the end of the day, back to that person starting a business. Yeah. You will get to the edge, and you will have to take that step. You got to walk through that black hole. Now, there's people that start businesses while they still work for the man. That's one thing. Those are successful. The same customer service still applies in those, right? So now all of a sudden, that faith. Well, if that faith is built in, I need to go make money, my faith lies in me taking a chance. And now who is the person that pays me? The customer. So my faith has to now lie in my customer. because I don't have any monetary value yet. Well, if I'm your customer and you want to have faith in me to pay you, I need to have faith in you. And now we become a team.
Well said.
It's the best way I know how to end that.
Well, on that note, that'll wrap up our episode today of resilience and true customer service with Danny Wright at TPS. I really appreciate all you guys tuning in. I hope that you're enjoying the. Love to see your support. So please give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, comment, leave us some ideas of what you'd like to hear on the upcoming episodes. And tune in on some of the upcoming lives on Facebook and YouTube. If you have some questions or if you want to chime in, you can set those notification bells up so you can be notified when we do go live and join in on the podcast. Until then, cheers and happy brewing. Thanks for coming in, Danny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Look forward to coming back.
Oh, yeah.